A CEO mocked Maid's daughter with a helicopter challenge. The engine proved him wrong. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon when the CEO, Harrison Grant, stood in the large, glass-walled conference room of his company headquarters, looking out over the skyline. The city below sparkled with lights, a stark contrast to the tension in the room. The table in front of him was covered with blueprints, technical reports, and expensive gadgets, everything a successful tech mogul could need. He was a billionaire, used to controlling every aspect of his empire, from the skyscrapers his company built to the luxury cars in his parking lot. But there was one thing Harrison couldn't control: his ego. He had always prided himself on his intelligence, his business acumen, and his power. However, today, in front of his high-powered engineers, he was about to meet someone who would challenge all of that. "I want you to fix this helicopter," he said, gesturing toward the sleek aircraft parked outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. "If you can do it, I'll give you $100 million. Prove me wrong. Prove that you're worth something." His voice dripped with condescension as he spoke. Harrison had been frustrated with the engineers in his company for weeks. They had been struggling to fix a critical issue with the helicopter, a new experimental model designed to revolutionize aviation. Despite their best efforts, it refused to start. No one could figure out what was wrong. The engineers, with their fancy degrees and impressive resumes, were stumped. Harrison, not one to suffer fools lightly, had grown tired of their failures. That's when he saw her, Amelia, the maid's daughter. She was standing off to the side of the room, quietly observing as she always did. Amelia wasn't part of the tech team, and she certainly wasn't someone Harrison had ever paid much attention to. She was just a child, the daughter of the woman who cleaned the offices. She had no place in a room full of highly paid engineers. But in a moment of sheer arrogance, Harrison decided to make her the butt of his joke. "What do you think, Amelia?" he sneered. "Do you think you can fix this helicopter? Or are you just here to sweep up the mess?" The room fell silent as everyone waited for Amelia's reaction. The engineers exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to respond. Amelia, a small girl no older than 12, stood there in her worn uniform, the edges of her apron frayed from years of use. Her blonde hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she had an air of quiet strength about her that contrasted sharply with the luxurious surroundings of the room. She felt the weight of everyone's gaze on her, but she didn't flinch. She had grown up watching her mother work hard to support their family, and she had learned to stand tall in the face of adversity. "My mom can't, but I can," Amelia said softly, her voice steady. She stepped forward, ignoring the incredulous stares from the engineers and the mocking smirk on Harrison's face. The challenge was impossible, but Amelia didn't back down. She had seen enough of these machines being built to know that it wasn't about the degrees or titles. It was about understanding the problem at its core. As the engineers looked on, Harrison crossed his arms, a bemused smile on his face. He was certain that this was just another prank, a child who didn't know the first thing about aircraft. But what Harrison didn't know was that Amelia wasn't just any child. She had been raised in the shadow of her mother's work, always learning, always observing. She had a natural aptitude for mechanics that had been honed by years of watching the world's finest engineers at work, and she had a mind that could process complex problems faster than anyone could imagine. She wasn't about to let a room full of arrogant engineers, or the CEO, dictate her worth. With a quiet confidence, Amelia knelt down in front of the helicopter, inspecting the engine. She reached out, her fingers tracing the components with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The engineers watched in stunned silence as Amelia worked, her hands moving over the aircraft as though she had built it herself. Harrison stood behind her, still skeptical, but now a little less sure of himself. The minutes ticked by, and what had begun as a joke was quickly turning into something much more serious. The helicopter's engine sputtered to life. The hum of the machine filled the room, and the once stubborn aircraft roared to life. The engineers stared, mouths agape, as the problem was fixed in a matter of minutes by a child who wasn't supposed to know how to do it. Harrison stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Amelia, the maid's daughter, had proven him wrong. She had not only fixed the helicopter but had done so with a calm that no one in the room could match. The room was silent, save for the sound of the engine purring like a cat. Harrison's smile faltered as he realized the magnitude of what had just occurred. He had underestimated Amelia, and in doing so, he had learned a valuable lesson. Never judge someone by their status, their appearance, or their background. True brilliance doesn't come with a price tag, it comes from within. The silence in the room stretched on, with only the hum of the helicopter's engine breaking the stillness. Harrison stood frozen, his arms still crossed, his mouth slightly agape. The engineers, who had once been so sure of their knowledge, now exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence shattered by the simple act of a young girl fixing what they could not. Amelia, the maid's daughter, had done the impossible, and she had done it with a grace and composure that left everyone in awe. Harrison's mind raced as he processed what had just happened. He had mocked her, treated her like nothing more than a cleaning girl's daughter, someone beneath his notice. And yet, it was she who had saved his company from a potential disaster. The room was heavy with disbelief. Amelia stood back up, brushing the dust off her hands, and glanced up at the CEO, who was now struggling to find words. His gaze shifted between her and the engineers, the reality of the situation slowly sinking in. How did you know? Harrison finally asked, his voice quieter than before, laced with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect. Amelia looked at him with calm eyes, as if the answer was obvious. It's just a matter of understanding the components, she said, her voice steady but filled with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. You have to understand how each piece works and how they connect. Harrison blinked, clearly taken aback by her simplicity. The engineers were silent, their previous arrogance now replaced by a humbling realization that someone they had dismissed so easily had outsmarted them all. But you're just a child, one of the engineers managed to mutter, still not quite believing what he had seen. Amelia didn't flinch. I'm more than that, she replied softly. I've learned from watching people who know what they're doing. Her words hung in the air, leaving the room feeling smaller, as if the vast space couldn't contain the truth that had just been revealed. The moment stretched on, but finally, Harrison took a step forward, his demeanor shifting from one of superiority to one of something else, something like respect. I was wrong, he admitted, his voice low. You've shown me something today that I didn't expect. I didn't think someone like you could know this much. Amelia didn't respond. She simply nodded, as if it was nothing more than the truth. The silence that followed was heavy, and for the first time, Harrison found himself without words. The engineers, who had once thought of themselves as the brightest minds in the room, now stood in the shadow of a young girl who had proven them wrong. They had all underestimated Amelia. They had judged her based on her appearance, based on her background, based on their own biases. But in the end, it was her knowledge, her understanding, and her ability to solve the problem that mattered. Harrison looked around at his engineers, then back at Amelia. I'm offering you a job, he said, his voice firm but respectful now. Not just as a mechanic, but as someone who can help us move forward. If you want it. Amelia blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected this. I don't know what to say. You don't have to decide now, Harrison said with a nod. But we'll make sure you have every opportunity to prove your worth here. No one gets to hide their talent anymore, not on my watch. As the room slowly came to life again, the tension seemed to melt away, replaced by something new, opportunity. Amelia had changed everything in that moment, not just for herself, but for everyone who had witnessed the transformation. She had proved that worth wasn't something that could be measured by status, appearance, or wealth. It was something far deeper. And for the first time, Harrison realized that sometimes, the people you least expect have the greatest potential to change the world. The days following Amelia's incredible demonstration were filled with a newfound respect. The engineers who had once dismissed her now sought her out for advice. Harrison Grant, too, watched her closely, eager to understand the mind behind such extraordinary skill. The helicopter incident had shaken him to his core, and he was determined to ensure Amelia's talents were nurtured, not wasted. As Amelia continued to work in the company, something began to change in the atmosphere of the office. No longer was she just the maid's daughter, a young girl with no place in the high-tech world of aviation. She was becoming an integral part of the team, her ideas gaining respect, her opinions valued by people who had once seen her as nothing more than a bystander. One morning, Harrison called her into his office. The walls of the room were lined with awards, trophies, and framed photographs of him shaking hands with powerful leaders. He was sitting behind his large desk, looking every bit the CEO. But today, his demeanor was different. He was leaning forward, his eyes focused, waiting for her to sit across from him. Amelia walked into the room, feeling the weight of the situation. She had never been in this office before, and she wasn't sure what to expect. "Amelia," Harrison began, his tone serious but not unkind. "I want to offer you a real position here at the company. A leadership role in the engineering division." Amelia blinked, surprised. "A leadership role? But you've proven yourself more than capable," Harrison cut in. "You've done things that even my top engineers couldn't manage. And I believe you have the potential to lead a team." Amelia paused for a moment, processing his words. This was a huge offer. This was everything she had dreamed of and more. But she couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready for it. "I appreciate it, Mr. Grant," she said softly. "But I'm still learning. I don't have the same education as the others. I wasn't trained in all of this." Harrison nodded. "Education doesn't define capability. What you've shown us is more valuable than any degree. You have real, practical knowledge. You see things differently than others, and that's why I believe you can do this." Amelia looked down at the desk, her mind racing. She had always been taught that her place was limited by what she could do, by the expectations of others. But here, in this office, was an opportunity that seemed too good to pass up. "I'm willing to try," she said finally, her voice steady but full of determination. Harrison smiled, leaning back in his chair. "That's all I need to hear. You'll start working on the new project starting next week. We'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed." Amelia left the office that day with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She had earned this moment, not just because of her technical skill, but because of the quiet strength she had shown in the face of doubt and ridicule. Over the next few weeks, Amelia threw herself into her new role. She worked with the engineers to troubleshoot and fix complex issues, often coming up with solutions that no one else could. But it wasn't just her technical brilliance that set her apart. It was her ability to inspire those around her. She was able to see the potential in people, to guide them with patience and understanding. She wasn't just leading a team. She was helping to transform the company's culture. The once stuffy, elitist atmosphere had begun to shift. There was a newfound humility among the staff, a recognition that talent and innovation could come from anywhere. As Harrison watched from his office, he saw the change taking place. Amelia had proven him wrong, not just about her abilities, but about his own assumptions. He had underestimated her, just as he had underestimated countless others in his life. And now, he was learning the greatest lesson of all, that true leadership wasn't about power or control, but about empowering others to find their own strength. Amelia had become more than just the maid's daughter. She had become a symbol of what was possible when people were given the chance to shine. And as she walked through the halls of the company, she no longer felt out of place. She had earned her seat at the table, and she was ready to change the world. The weeks following Amelia's promotion were nothing short of transformative. The engineering team, once skeptical and dismissive, had quickly learned to respect her leadership. Under her guidance, they were tackling problems they had previously considered insurmountable. Amelia's ability to think outside the box and her calm demeanor in the face of pressure were beginning to shape the future of the company. Yet, even as things were looking up in the office, there was still a part of Amelia that struggled to believe she truly belonged. Every day, she worked hard to prove herself, not just to Harrison or the engineers, but to herself. She had grown up in a world that told her she wasn't enough. Now, she was leading a team of brilliant minds, but sometimes the weight of that responsibility felt overwhelming. One afternoon, while reviewing designs for a new aviation project, Amelia found herself lost in thought. She had made incredible strides, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still the outsider, the girl from the wrong side of the tracks. Harrison walked into the room, a rare smile on his face. "How's the project coming along?" he asked, his tone genuinely curious. Amelia looked up, startled. It's going well, she said, forcing a smile. We're on track for the next phase. Harrison nodded, his eyes not leaving hers. I've been watching the progress closely. You've been doing great work, Amelia. She felt her heart race. It wasn't just the compliment that made her nervous. It was the sincerity in his voice. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a long silence between them, a quiet that felt both comforting and unsettling. Finally, Harrison spoke again, but this time his tone was more serious. Amelia, I need to ask you something, he said. Are you happy here? Really happy. Amelia blinked, caught off guard by the question. I think so, she replied, her voice uncertain. I mean, I'm grateful for everything. I've learned so much already, and I know I've got more to learn. But sometimes it feels like I'm not sure if I'm meant to be here, you know? Like I'm just waiting for someone to find out that I don't belong. Harrison's gaze softened. Amelia, you belong here more than you know. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. His words struck a chord deep within her. She had spent so much of her life doubting herself, convinced that her past would always hold her back. But now, in this moment, she realized that the only person who could stop her from achieving greatness was herself. With a deep breath, Amelia nodded. I'll try to remember that. Harrison smiled, a look of pride in his eyes. I believe in you, Amelia. You've proven yourself more than once. You've earned your place here. As the days went on, Amelia's confidence grew. She no longer questioned whether she belonged. She was a leader now, and her team respected her not just for her skills, but for the way she led with kindness and humility. The engineers who once doubted her now came to her for advice, and Amelia took every opportunity to lift them up, just as Harrison had lifted her. One day, as she stood in the conference room, reviewing plans for a new project, she realized how far she had come. The little girl who had once been dismissed as nothing more than the maid's daughter had become a force to be reckoned with in the world of aviation. And for the first time in her life, she truly believed that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Amelia's rise in the company had been nothing short of extraordinary. Her once quiet demeanor had transformed into one of confident leadership. The engineers, who had initially dismissed her as nothing more than the maid's daughter, now sought her expertise, valuing her insights more than ever. She had earned their respect, and in turn, she had begun to see herself as more than just a product of her circumstances. Her team had flourished under her guidance, and they were now on the brink of launching a groundbreaking new aviation project. Yet, despite her success, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope. Each day, she feared that one mistake, one misstep, could bring everything crashing down. She couldn't afford to fail, not now, not after everything she had worked for. As the project neared its final phase, tensions in the office began to rise. The engineers, exhausted from months of hard work, were feeling the pressure. Harrison, too, had been more distant lately, spending long hours in meetings, his mind seemingly elsewhere. Amelia couldn't help but notice the change in him. She had come to admire him not only as a CEO, but as a mentor. He had believed in her when no one else did, and now, she found herself questioning whether he still had faith in her. One late evening, as Amelia sat at her desk, reviewing the final plans for the project, Harrison walked into the room. His usual confident stride was replaced by a tired, measured step. He looked at her for a moment, his eyes softening. Amelia, he said quietly, can we talk? Amelia straightened up in her chair, instantly alert. Of course, Mr. Grant. What's on your mind? Harrison hesitated for a moment before speaking. I've been thinking about this project. We're close, but there are still risks. I need to know that you're ready for what's coming. This will be the biggest test of your career. Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She had known the project was important, but hearing it from Harrison, hearing the weight in his voice, made it feel even more real. I'm ready, she said, trying to hide the doubt creeping into her mind. I've been working hard with the team, and we're almost there. Harrison nodded, but there was something in his eyes that made Amelia uneasy. I believe in you, Amelia, he said, but the pressure is going to be immense. This is where the real challenge begins. His words lingered in the air, and for a moment, Amelia felt the full weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. But then, something inside her shifted. She had faced challenges before. She had been underestimated, overlooked, and mocked. And she had risen above all of it. She could do this. She was no longer the girl who had been dismissed by others. She had proven herself time and time again. As the final day of the project approached, Amelia rallied her team. She worked side by side with them, pushing through the exhaustion and the doubts, leading them toward the finish line. The final test was grueling, but under Amelia's leadership, the team succeeded. The new project, a revolutionary aircraft design, was ready for launch. Harrison stood in the back of the room, watching as Amelia and her team celebrated. There was no more doubt in his mind. She had done it. Amelia had not only proven herself to him, but she had also proven it to herself. The girl who had once been nothing more than the maid's daughter was now one of the most respected leaders in the company. And as the celebration continued, Amelia took a moment to step outside, breathing in the cool night air. She looked up at the stars, a smile spreading across her face. She had come so far, and the future was hers to shape. The days after the successful project launch were filled with excitement and celebration. Amelia's team was praised for their hard work, and her leadership was recognized in ways she had never expected. The once quiet girl, who had stood in the shadows, now stood tall in the spotlight, her name being mentioned with respect in board meetings and press releases. But with the newfound recognition came an immense weight. Amelia's position as a leader had become more challenging than she had anticipated. As the company's success grew, so did the pressure on her shoulders. She felt the eyes of the world on her, both those who admired her and those who had once doubted her. There were still moments when the old doubts crept in. Was she truly ready for all of this? Was she truly worthy of the position she had fought so hard for? These questions haunted her, even as she stood confidently in front of her team. Harrison, too, had noticed the change in her. She was no longer the unsure young girl she had been when she first joined the company. She was a leader now, but the intensity of the pressure was starting to show. One afternoon, Harrison called her into his office. She entered, her usual calm demeanor in place, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. He motioned for her to sit. "Amelia, I've been watching you," he said, his tone serious. "You've done more than anyone could have expected, but I see the toll it's taking on you. You're carrying a lot on your shoulders." Amelia sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's just, there's always something more to do. There's always another problem to solve, another project to lead. It feels like I'm always moving forward, but never truly resting." Harrison leaned forward, his expression softening. "I get it. I've been there. The weight of leadership can be overwhelming. But you don't have to do this alone." Amelia looked up at him, surprised by his words. "What do you mean?" "I mean you've built a team that trusts you, but you also need to trust them. Delegate. Let them help you carry the load." Harrison's words resonated deeply with her. She had always been the one to take on the responsibility herself, not wanting to burden others. But now, she realized that true leadership wasn't about doing everything on her own. It was about empowering others to step up and share in the success. "You've come so far, Amelia," Harrison continued. "You've proven your worth, not just to me, but to the entire company. But you need to take care of yourself, too. You can't lead if you're burning out." Amelia nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She had been so focused on proving herself that she had forgotten to take a step back and allow herself to rest. Over the next few weeks, she made a conscious effort to share the responsibility with her team. She trusted her engineers to take the lead on certain tasks, allowing herself the time and space to recharge. It was a difficult shift for her, but one that ultimately made her a stronger leader. As the months passed, Amelia's confidence grew even more. She had learned that leadership wasn't about shouldering all the burdens. It was about guiding others, empowering them, and trusting in their abilities. She was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was Amelia Grant, a leader in her own right, and she had earned her place at the table. One evening, as she looked out over the city from her office, Amelia felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. She had proven to the world, and to herself, that she was capable of greatness. And in doing so, she had created a new path, not just for herself, but for others who, like her, had once been told they didn't belong. As the months passed, Amelia's leadership continued to shine, and the company reached new heights of success. However, despite the progress, she knew there was still one challenge ahead. The engineering division was tasked with a highly ambitious project, a prototype that would revolutionize the industry, but the stakes were higher than ever. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were personal. Amelia had worked tirelessly to get to where she was, but with this new project, she knew she couldn't do it alone. The weight of the company's future rested on her shoulders, and for the first time in months, doubt crept back into her mind. She couldn't help but think, what if she failed? What if she let everyone down? One evening, while reviewing the project's progress with her team, she noticed one of her engineers, Mark, looking particularly tense. He had been part of the team that had helped launch the successful aircraft, and his reputation within the company was stellar. But lately, he seemed distracted, more quiet than usual. Amelia, sensing the shift, asked, "Mark, are you okay? You've been quieter than usual." Mark hesitated before answering. "I'm just feeling the weight of this project. We've come so far, but I'm not sure we can pull it off. I feel like everything is riding on this, and it's making me second-guess every decision." Amelia nodded, understanding the pressure. "I get it," she said softly. "We all feel it. But we're a team. I trust you, and I trust everyone in this room. We've built something great before, and we can do it again." Mark looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time that evening. His face softened, and he let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Amelia. I needed to hear that." The conversation with Mark was a turning point for Amelia. She realized that despite her earlier growth, she had still been holding onto the burden alone. She had been carrying the weight of the company's future, but in that moment, she knew she couldn't bear it by herself. She had built a team, and it was time to lean on them. Over the next few weeks, Amelia made a conscious effort to delegate more, to involve her team in the decision-making process, and to foster an environment of trust. She empowered her engineers to take ownership of their roles, and in return, they brought new ideas and solutions that she hadn't even considered. The project moved forward faster than anyone had anticipated. As the prototype neared completion, the company's executives gathered for a final review. The room was filled with anticipation, and even Harrison, who had always been confident in Amelia's abilities, was on edge. "Amelia, this is your project," Harrison said, standing at the head of the table. "What are your thoughts?" Amelia took a deep breath, her mind flashing back to the days when she had been nothing more than the maid's daughter. She had come so far, and now, standing in front of the most powerful people in the company, she felt a quiet strength. "We've built something amazing," she said, her voice steady. "This project represents everything we've worked for. And with the team we have, I believe we can change the industry." There was a moment of silence as everyone absorbed her words. Then, one by one, the executives nodded, impressed by her confidence and vision. The prototype was ready for launch, and Amelia's leadership had carried the company to this point. As the meeting adjourned, Harrison caught Amelia's eye and smiled. "You've done it," he said, a look of pride in his eyes. "You've proven that not only are you capable of leading, but you've built something that will leave a lasting impact." Amelia smiled back, her heart swelling with pride. She had come full circle. The girl who had once been dismissed, the girl who had felt out of place, was now the woman who had not only earned her place at the table, but had transformed an entire industry. As she walked out of the room, she felt a sense of peace. She had proven herself, but more importantly, she had learned that true leadership wasn't about carrying the weight alone. It was about trust, collaboration, and empowering others to shine. And in that moment, she knew her journey was far from over. As Amelia walked out of the meeting room, the weight of what she had just achieved settled in. The project was a success. The prototype was ready to change the future of the industry, and her leadership had been recognized by those who once doubted her. But even with the world at her feet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had proven herself time and time again, but she knew that true fulfillment didn't come from external validation alone. It came from within. Over the following weeks, Amelia continued to push the boundaries of what was possible, but she also started to realize something deeper. She had spent so much of her life focused on proving others wrong, on showing that she could succeed against all odds, that she had neglected the one thing that mattered most, herself. Late one evening, as she sat in her office, reviewing plans for the next phase of the project, Harrison knocked and entered. He had always been the one to offer guidance, but tonight, it was different. "Amelia, I need to ask you something," Harrison said, his tone softer than usual. "What's next for you? What do you really want to achieve?" Amelia looked up, surprised by the question. She had always been driven by the pressure to succeed, to meet expectations, But now she was faced with a new kind of challenge. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been so focused on leading the company, on making everyone else proud, that I haven't stopped to think about what I want. I don't know what my next step is." Harrison nodded, a knowing smile on his face. "You've come a long way, Amelia. You've proven yourself more than anyone could have imagined. But now, it's time to start thinking about what you want, what your legacy will be. It's not just about the company or the projects. It's about you and the impact you want to have on the world." His words hit her like a wave. For the first time in years, Amelia stopped and truly considered her future, not as the maid's daughter or the CEO's protege, but as Amelia Grant. What did she want to leave behind? What did she want to accomplish that was more than just another successful project? The realization was overwhelming but liberating. She had spent so long proving her worth to others that she had forgotten to ask herself what truly mattered. The following weeks were a time of reflection for Amelia. She started to step back from the day-to-day operations, delegating more to her team and allowing herself time to explore new opportunities. She realized that her true passion was not just in engineering, but in mentorship, helping others, especially young women, find their own paths in industries that had long been dominated by men. Amelia began working on creating a mentorship program within the company, one that would give others the same opportunities she had received. She wanted to help them see that they, too, could achieve greatness, regardless of where they came from. As the mentorship program took shape, Amelia felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She wasn't just changing the industry with groundbreaking projects. She was changing lives. She was creating a legacy, not of machines or designs, but of people who would carry the torch forward long after she was gone. One evening, as she stood in front of a group of young women in the mentorship program, she realized how far she had come. These women were looking up to her, not because of her success in the business world, but because of her journey. She was no longer just the maid's daughter. She was a leader, a mentor, and an inspiration. The road had been long and difficult, but in the end, it had led her to a place where she could finally make the kind of difference that mattered. And as she looked around the room, filled with eager faces, Amelia knew that her journey was far from over. It had only just begun. Amelia stood in the center of the room, watching as the young women of her mentorship program shared their stories. It had been a long road from the quiet, uncertain girl she once was to the confident leader she had become, but now, as she looked around at the faces of these women, she realized the true impact of her journey. The company had grown, the projects were more ambitious than ever, and Amelia's name was now synonymous with innovation and leadership. But this moment, was the culmination of everything she had worked for. She was creating a ripple effect that would continue long after her. As the women in her program spoke, their words filled Amelia with pride. They spoke about how her guidance had given them the courage to pursue careers in fields where they had once been told they didn't belong. They talked about how, through her example, they had learned that it didn't matter where you came from or what people thought of you. What mattered was the passion, the dedication, and the willingness to fight for what you believed in. Amelia listened to their stories, her heart swelling with emotion. This was what she had always wanted, to help others see their own worth, to empower them to become leaders in their own right. She had built more than just a successful career. She had built a legacy. She had shown these women that they could achieve anything, just as she had. The applause from the group pulled her from her thoughts. She smiled, a sense of peace washing over her. In the midst of all the success, the recognition, and the accolades, this was what mattered most. The lives she was touching, the women she was helping to rise alongside her. Later that evening, after the meeting had concluded, Amelia took a walk outside, the cool night air refreshing her mind. She looked up at the stars, her thoughts drifting back to where it had all started. The challenges she had faced, the doubters who had tried to hold her back, the moments of uncertainty that had threatened to derail everything. She had overcome them all. She had proven to herself, to Harrison, and to everyone else that she was capable of achieving greatness. And in doing so, she had paved the way for others to follow. As she stood there, looking up at the sky, Amelia realized that the true measure of success wasn't the titles, the awards, or the recognition. It was the lives you touched along the way, the people you helped to grow, and the legacy you left behind. And as she thought about the future, she knew that her journey wasn't over. She had only just begun. There were more young women to mentor, more challenges to conquer, and more lives to change. Amelia smiled, the future ahead of her shining bright with promise. She had come from nothing, but now, she was part of something much bigger. She had built a community, a movement, a legacy. And in the end, that was the greatest success of all. Discover the inspiring journey of a young woman who defied the odds and built a remarkable career in the world of high-tech engineering. In this millionaire story, witness how a humble maid's daughter rises to become a leader in a cutting-edge company, proving that determination, skill, and resilience can break through any barrier. From overcoming adversity to leading groundbreaking projects, this millionaire story shows the power of mentorship and the importance of believing in one's potential. The story unfolds with unexpected twists, showing how one person's journey can spark a wave of change in an entire industry. Learn about the challenges faced, the doubts that were overcome, and the profound impact one person can have on others. This is not just a tale of personal success, but a testament to the power of lifting others as you rise. If you enjoy millionaire stories filled with heart, ambition, and transformation, this story will inspire you to believe that anything is possible. This millionaire story showcases not only the achievements of one woman, but the lives she touched along the way. Follow her as she builds a lasting legacy and proves that success is not just about wealth, but the difference you make in the world. Whether you're looking for motivation or a new perspective on what it takes to succeed, this millionaire story will leave you inspired and ready to take on the world.